You know, I get a lot of criticism for using up natural resources, especially cutting trees down. And you know, I do have to admit, I do feel guilty when I'm cutting a tree down, even though I know better. But the stigma is so deep that you know, it's been so ingrained in us that it's unhealthy to cut trees down, that even I fall for it, despite knowing how basically to manage a forest and how much impact we have as humans on the landscape. And unfortunately we do. So what I'm clearing here is about what is it, maybe a third of an acre, quarter of an acre? Yeah, maybe a third of an acre of trees I've cut down. Now it was fairly open forest, so there wasn't that many trees, considering you know what it would be like to cut in a more dense area like over in the lowlands and the swampy areas on the property. But you know, like I said, I do feel guilty. Now what I'm doing though is utilizing all of the trees that I've cut down for various purposes, and also I'll be creating a much richer habitat, not only for us for growing our own food, but for wildlife as well. So this entire third of an acre or more will have my workshop and chicken coop, and I think probably a little greenhouse as well in it. But the entire perimeter of it will be berry bushes, like a thick hedge of food producing bushes, you know, shrubs, low vegetation, and probably some higher stuff as well, maybe fruit trees around the exterior. Now what's interesting though is I just cut these trees down yesterday, maple, birch, beech, hop hornbeam. There's probably a couple others that I'm missing. But what I'm finding interesting is, of course, the deer know. Every time I cut a tree down, deer and moose come and they feed on the branch tops, on the twigs, and on these fresh shoots and buds. And that's exactly what's happening here. These are all deer tracks around me. You know, nothing goes to waste in nature. It's really just how we perceive it, and also how we industrialize it and make it unsafe by using modern little chemical processes and stuff. So nature on its own takes care of itself, and even us within nature, we fit into that cycle as well. So clearing land has always been something we've done as a species that's actually benefited wildlife and benefited the environment. A lot of times these forests get too mature and they become more and more sterile, less functional, except for a few species that can capitalize on old growth forest. So if it's done right, it's not a bad thing. Now, I'm only, like I said, cutting about a third of an acre out of the almost 30 acres that we have, and then surrounded by all this crown land that doesn't get cut at all. So this is a tiny little pocket of clear cut, but this tiny clear cut is actually going to be more productive than probably the full, I don't know, hundreds of acres that surround me, because of this opening. Forests, wildlife, and plant species love these forest openings. They become much more diverse. It's usually where the berry trees or berry bushes grow, and all the other forbs and grasses and everything else that deer and other animals like to or need to eat. So it'll be super productive. Now my challenge is going to be keeping wildlife out of the garden, and I am going to come up with some living fence ideas and some rustic fence ideas to keep them out. But that's going to have to develop over time, because working mainly alone, wife and daughters are helpful, but a lot of this stuff is sort of dangerous work, and I'd rather do this alone, and they can continue to do the other things that I can't get to, which is why you're not seeing me cook on the channel recently, because I haven't been doing much cooking myself. So I will be getting some help, but predominantly I'll be building all of the infrastructure here on my own. Now I think they're going to help me stack all this wood today too. So I think what I'll do with all these branch tops is just to make sort of a hedgerow with them, and that'll act as a temporary fence until I can get around to building something more permanent. Now, deer can jump like 10 feet high, so even a 6-foot fence doesn't keep them out. Maybe keep a lot of them out, the ones that are less, unless there's something really attractive on the inside. But something wider, like a fence row or hedgerow of wider branches, or even a double fence, tends to keep the deer out, because they don't know how far they have to jump to clear it. So that'll be the plan, probably a wide fence for now, which will be eventually become just living hedge of some kind of food producing, like berry producing shrubbery. So it's going to be fun. It's a forest garden essentially. That's what's different than homesteading on agricultural land, as much as I do like farmland as well. Further up north like this, you really don't get any farms, because the land is not well suited for farming or any kind of agriculture other than maybe cattle. And probably a few hundred years ago, or a couple hundred years ago, when this land grant was issued for this property, it was probably cut and probably even tried cattle or doing some kind of homesteading, judging by the age of the trees. And I actually found a wire fence embedded in one part of the property, so I thought that was interesting that somebody even tried. But anyway, it's not suited for that. Now the soils are pretty deep here and pretty fertile, which is why I have all these maple trees growing, and the beech and yellow birch, typically indicative of a pretty healthy soil system. So I will test the pH and make sure I can see if I need to amend it with ash from the fire and lime and stuff. But it's going to be challenging just because of where I am, the wildlife competition I'm going to have, the fact that this is not ever been enriched by, I assume, by kind of adding fertilizers or anything to this land. So it's all going to be natural what I'm doing. Like I said, I'd like forest gardening. Ideally what I'd rather do is create some natural habitat, natural or native plants, grow those things predominantly here, along with raised beds with my cultivated vegetables, and then spend a lot more time exploring all of the land around and finding those natural patches of food where berries grow and mushrooms and sunchokes, not black cherries, but pin cherries and choke cherries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries. We have a lot of natural food in the forest, but it's widespread and not typically very concentrated. Like you can go miles in a bush and not find any kind of edible food for humans, but then you find these little pockets, especially where there's openings, where there'll be abundance of food. So by next year, what I'm hoping I'll be able to do is get completely off the commercial food system and acquire all of our food from the land. Probably 50% maybe what we can grow or raise, maybe more than that, depending on chickens and stuff, and then the rest from the wild. Fish and game is abundant in pockets again, so within my the range of what I can access, there's plenty of game, let's put it that way. And there's always plenty of fish. I've got lots of fish in the lake, so I'll be fine for getting, and I probably could almost entirely live off the land myself if it was just me, but now with my wife to feed and kids, now that we're going through this weird period that we'll see if we recover from or not, whether they continue to be a little bit dependent or at least cooperative with food production with my wife and I. So that's why I really do need to create this garden, a sort of victory garden or a security garden where we're able to provide more of our calories are on our own rather than relying on that system if it's not fully available. It's always going to be available, but fully and safely available to us. So a good time, just a good reminder to get back to what I planned on doing or started doing years ago and have gotten a little bit away from, just a little bit distracted building this homestead in the wilderness, which of course I'm absolutely thrilled that I finally got to do. But now to add back in the security of the food as well is important to me. Anyway, it feels like the temperature is just about to get above freezing now, and that sun is quite warm. Beautiful spring day, and just perfect for working outside, and it's well before bug season, hopefully another month before the bugs start coming out, the biting insects I mean. So I'm going to take advantage of this cool morning, get bulk of the harder work done, get all these branches cleared, and then start laying out the plot here, figuring out where the buildings exactly are going and where the raised beds are going and where to put the fencing and stuff. Hard to believe how different the snow cover is from last time we were out. The only problem with putting all this wood like this, all these branches, that it's going to become a fire hazard too when this dries. Being smaller diameter, they're going to dry fairly quickly, but like this summer. So I don't really want to leave these forever, and I want to keep fire back from them, especially with all the birch bark included. So like I said, this is fairly temporary, and it can be a fire hazard having this loose brush in big piles like this, especially too close to either a building or too close to the conifers that catch easily, like the hemlock needles. So as soon as I can, I'll be replacing it with either a living fence or a combination of the living fence and like a woven fence that's not as twiggy. Carry it one by one.
Whoa.
Yeah. Twist. Oh, that's heavy.
Whoa. Okay.
What?
You need help.
That's what I do every day. Anything we don't want to rot, you need to keep off the ground. So all these poles that I want to use later for a building material, I'm going to lean them all up against here. What do you think? Oh, you carried, where is that, right? You want me to throw those?